Welcome to Garage Gym Athlete Ask Me Anything. It's pretty simple. I'll be answering questions from the thousands of athletes that follow our daily programming. If you have a question or topic you want submitted, go to garagegymathlete.com/AMA. Let's get started. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jared Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
What's up, Jared? Finally doing these in my office.
Yeah, you're looking good, looking crisp.
I think I chose the wrong shirt because I think I'm blending into the background. If this was a green screen, then I think I'd just be a floating head, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Live and we learn.
Next time. And if you are watching this on the YouTubes, we're trying to get better video capabilities, and I'm going to show it off right now with the click of a button. If you're listening, don't worry, you're not missing a bunch because I am just actually putting the question on the screen. But here it is. Michael T asks, he says, greeting from Australia. My question is, can you do too much zone 2 cardio? Is there an ideal limit to number of hours per day or number of days in a row? Thanks for the great podcast, guys. Well, thank you, Michael T, for the question and for saying we have a great podcast. I really appreciate that.
I think so.
So do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
I'll just chime in real quick because I don't have a ton to say about it, but zone 2 is great. I try and throw in a lot of zone 2 at the end of workouts, especially cool down on, our programming is 4 days a week. So at least one of those days, or at least a fifth or sixth day, are going to be strictly zone 2 type of conditioning with maybe some other stuff thrown in. And if I'm doing any conditioning, I'd try and end it with at least 10 to 15 minutes of zone 2. But having said that, because we've talked about all the good parts of zone 2 in the past, I think if you did a lot of it, if that was your primary point of conditioning that you've been doing, from a mentality standpoint, I think it might be hard to go back to higher intensities because you might be really good at zone 2 and doing those moderate intensities for your conditioning. But if you try to go all out, do those high intensity efforts mentally, physically you might be okay for it. Mentally, it might kind of drag you down because that's a lot of the effort is completely different. So keeping zone 2 in it is great, and to work that in, especially for extra stuff you do. I think if it shouldn't be your primary source of conditioning. I think you still need to have the other parts of it. So if you can fit it in other ones, other high intent, zone 4 or even 5, to balance out with the zone 2. But I don't think that it would in the long run if you can just do that, especially if you're just getting back to it. I don't think there would be necessarily a negative, but as long as so to me, it's just the mentality standpoint of it.
Yeah, and I think in our view, we want you to be a little bit more well-rounded. So I could answer this question from multiple different angles, because if you look at heart rate training and specifically zone training, you kind of have to get all your information from endurance type athletes, right? Because they're the ones more concerned with this. A power lifter is not too concerned about what zones they're in when they're training or anything like that. And for us, with concurrent training, we're trying to blend the two. And so a cool thing, like if you just kind of want to go down this journey a little bit, and look into some of the endurance stuff. I believe his name, if I'm pronouncing it correct, is Phil Maffetone. I could be butchering that a touch. Anyway, he kind of pioneered this low intensity training. He's not the big proponent on all the science behind zone 2 or anything, but he was kind of onto this before anyone else. And he was an Ironman triathlete. And he would, when he would train, it was kind of like odd. People would like go train with him because he was a really good Ironman triathlete, but he would be running so slow. He would just be like barely jogging, and the majority of his training was this way. And people just thought like he was crazy, but then he would crush the Ironmans because then he would go and operate at a higher intensity. But to Joe's point, you have to see those intensities. You can't only live in zone 2. So technically speaking, to answer your question, you can't do too much zone 2. Like you could be on a walking or zone 2 program for the rest of your life if you wanted to. You could keep strength and your conditioning on zone 2, but you're not going to be prepared for much else. So you have to get you have to get zone 4 and you have to get zone 5 in occasionally. Zone 3 is kind of like the race pace. Like that's where you would want But zone two is going to build this significant base, and we've talked about that before. But down to percentages, what do we like to see versus what do other types of training want to see? It's fairly similar. In the endurance world, you could go up to 80% of your conditioning being in zone two, and the rest being those higher intensity intervals. For us, we like to see closer to 50 to 60% of our conditioning being in zone two. So I don't really look at the strength work as much, but over 30-day rolling period, this is kind of how I calculate it out. And that's why we do so much zone two backloaded at the end of every month. So for our deloads, is because time wise, of all the conditioning that we've programmed, it'll bounce out to around that 50% mark with how much zone two we have thrown into just specifically that last week, but also, it's intermixed throughout some of the cycle itself at times. There might be one or two just regularly programmed that aren't in deload. So those are kind of the percentages we're looking. So rolling 30 days, 50 to 60%. Endurance athletes hit 70, 80%. And then just making sure that you're hitting those other areas if you want to be able to perform at those higher intensities. Like I said, like a lot like you were saying, Joe.
Yeah, goals and balance are definitely some of the more important factors when thinking of how much you should do.
Yeah, and zone two just is so overlooked. It's like this is how you build your base. Like this is how you build your base so you can build on top of that. And like with this mile I'm doing right now, I think a lot of people, if they had to program this for themselves, they would run sprint intervals every other day and think that they're just going to get faster. And I'm taking the opposite approach. I want we're doing sprint intervals like once a week, but I want to build this huge aerobic base with zone two over a longer period of time, as opposed to running myself into the ground over a 12 to 16 weeks. I want to build this huge base with the aim to hopefully run a 5-minute mile.
Hmm.
Not saying with it not being challenging, but being conditioned to do so. Because I've ran a mile and a half for the Air Force, Joe, I'm sure you have as well, where we ran way past our capacity of what our fitness
Hmm.
level could actually hold. Talking like vomiting after, or I've been dry heaving during. It's because we're trying so hard to push ourselves to a level we're not truly conditioned, and our body can only hold on for so long. So we're getting all these alarm signals. I'd rather build this huge base and be able to execute at that high intensity later on. And I think that's what you have to do and why you can do so much zone two. I just wouldn't want it to be the only thing in my training. It also
Yep.
sounds boring as hell.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy the one day that I do of like a longer 3-4 mile, even 5, like a zone two run, but I mean that's the entire day, and after a while, halfway through, I'm counting down the minutes. I still don't mind it. I like those days, but it's just I need to do something else.
It's cool to see zone two get better though. Like we're
Yeah.
doing zone two and on the BCT track, and I've done like I got a quarter of a mile further in a same allotted amount of zone two time, and it's just cool because your heart rate is clamped, so you're just getting a little bit fitter to like go be able to go that much further. So it's cool to see those things.
Yeah, yeah, mile times as well.
Cool. Well, Michael T, thank you so much for the question about how much zone two we should be looking at in our programming. If anybody else has a question out there, go ahead, go to garagegymathlete.com/AMA. You could submit your questions, and to everyone who has, thank you. We are going to be answering those over the next couple of weeks. And, if you're listening to this, 5-star review, positive comment really helps the show. If you're watching, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and also leave us a comment on these. You can even drop your AMA question in the YouTube comments if you want, because we can look at those and respond to those as well. So thank you guys so much for listening or watching. I hope you enjoyed today's Ask Me Anything episode. So one more time, if you want to submit a question, topic, or idea, you can do so at garagegymathlete.com/AMA. And hey, while you're there, if you haven't already, sign up for Garage Gym Athlete membership. We are the best community and programming on the internet. I dare you to try and prove me wrong.